Hi everyone, it's me, Crafty Witch. Welcome back to my channel. So I decided to do another list of 40 ideas for your Book of Shadows, your grimoire, your magical journal, whatever you want to call it. I've got them all written down here, so I'll read them off to you, maybe do a little bit of discussion on some of them. So one is hair magic, and this some people, they just kind of throw it in with tag locks. And if you don't know what a tag log is, go Google it. But hair magic, are there any cultural practices that have been kind of passed down to you that has now become part of your own magical practice? For instance, with a lot of, or not, I shouldn't say a lot, with some native tribes here in North America, when somebody dies, and if you have long hair and you're really close to them, you may braid your hair and then cut the braid off at the nape of your neck, and then you put that braid in the coffin with the deceased person, and that's a sign of honor to that deceased person. It also symbolizes to everybody else around that you are in mourning, so it is a sign of mourning as well. So that is a practice that a lot of people still use and do here. And that is one of the reasons why my hair is short. After the death of my parents, I used to have long hair, and I cut it, and I haven't let it grow out since. So my hair used to be down to my butt, but now it's just, this is kind of where I keep it now. As well, we also believe like you never let your hair kind of fall into the hands of another person, because it is believed that they could use your hair to send bad luck to you or bad medicine to you, to hurt you in some way, because it's such a, well, it's a part of our bodies, right? So they would use that in sympathetic magic, for instance. Another thing with regards to hair is sometimes I will use my own hair for spells. So let's say I want to do a prosperity spell. I might collect my hair, and then on a new or full moon, I may, with the hair that I've collected, say from my brush, then I create a rope, and I'll kind of make like a little braided rope out of my hair, and then use that as a form of hair magic. I might also just create like a witch's cord out of my hair, and put the knots on the cord. So is that something you use? Why or why not? Now, if you happen to be shaven head, or you're bald, or maybe you've lost your hair, maybe you have cancer and you've gone through chemo and radiation and your hair has fallen out, can you still use those kinds of spells? And can you substitute that hair with something else, perhaps yarn, embroidery thread? Is there ways you can still utilize something to symbolize hair? So that's one idea. Another idea is spiritual retreats. Number two, there was like, not a monastery, but it was kind of like a monastery. It was about 2.5 hours from here, and people could go, literally pay like $40 to stay for the weekend. And it was, obviously it was a Christian place, but you could go for the weekend, pay like, I don't know, $40 at that time, and you could stay there, and you'd be there in silence. They had their meal times. You didn't have to talk to anybody, but you could go and do like self-reflection about your life, your spiritual path, that kind of thing. Is that a practice you might want to incorporate into your own journeys? There are some places you might want to go for a day, the night, a weekend, where you could go by yourself and do that self-reflection. Is there anything like that around where you are? Just like a little spiritual retreat. Also, what about group retreats, spiritual retreats? Is there maybe a place where people can go, and you guys can, pitch some tents or haul in your campers, and, do things, maybe do some drumming circles, maybe do some chanting, some meditation, maybe do some Reiki treatments or energy work for one another, where people can come together, and could this be like a yearly event, that kind of thing. So just some ideas. Number 3, ceremonial protocols versus cultural protocols. Are they one and the same? How are they different? For a lot of folks that have grown up in tribal systems, or Native Americans, indigenous people, our ceremonial protocols and our cultural protocols, they're like this. They're so deeply intertwined with one another. It can be really difficult to kind of pull it apart because it's so intertwined. For other folks, do you have that issue? Maybe you don't. Maybe you see it as one and the same, so maybe there is no difference. Maybe you find it really difficult to separate the two. That's the way some people figure, is just that it's one and the same, just let it be, kind of thing. Number 4, does your cultural background influence your magical practice? Have you adopted a cultural practice that is not part of your own DNA? And have you done so respectfully, so that it's not considered like cultural appropriation? Number 5, define cultural appropriation and reflect on your current practice. Are there any things within your existing practice that could be considered cultural appropriation? Maybe you have never really stopped to consider that before. I'm just trying to think. Okay, sweat lodges are one. Some people call them sweat lodges, some people call them stone heats. They were part of the Plains tribes. We've utilized those things. Polly, my son's dog. So if you hear like shaking, scratching, licking, anything like that, that's the dog. I lost track. Oh yeah. So with regards to sweat lodges, unfortunately now there's people who are non-indigenous, who have not been adopted into the tribes, who have not grown up with that practice, but now promote that practice. They're benefiting from it because they're charging money to people to attend, and that is detrimental to the cultural origin of that ceremony, because you're not getting the full teachings behind why things are done a certain way within that ceremony and how to properly conduct it. You're not taught the songs. It's so much more than just heating rocks up over a fire and go sitting in this little structure where it gets super hot. Like it's not, it goes beyond that. So are there any of those kind of practices that you've might have implemented into your own magical working that is really cultural appropriation? Like, did you stop to consider it? That being said, some people strongly identify with another cultural teaching that maybe is not of their own background, and they really want to be respectful of that, and they want to incorporate that. How can they do that without it being rude or disrespectful or taken away from people of that culture? So just some things for people to consider and think about. Number 6, awakenings. Have you had any profound, life-changing spiritual awakenings? Can you document that and the impact it's had on your life, your practice, your spiritual outlook? Number 7, star people. What are star people? Aliens. Does your practice acknowledge the existence or the lack of existence of other life forms from other planets, from far away from here, other dimensions? Is that part of Are there any cultural teachings that have been handed down that acknowledge the star people? How has that impacted your practice? Maybe it hasn't. Maybe you don't believe in that. Maybe that's all phony baloney to you. For instance, in my culture, we grew up hearing about these stories about what we call the star people. They came from the stars, and how, some were good, some were not so good, and how some of them helped us, some of them didn't. Some were what we would consider to be mean. Those are probably the ones that would take people and do things to them. But anyway, has that been a part of your practice at all? Do you have any stories, any legends that were handed down through your family or your cultural background regarding those entities? And does that affect you now in some way? Number 8, death omens and signs. So, some families, in our family, we are very much mixed bloods. So, like, people talk about banshees and things like that, and women crying when there's going to be a death in certain families. We actually have that in our family. We will hear a lady crying inside of our home, like, let's say it's nighttime. And this has happened so many times at my mom's house when we were there before a relative had passed. But we'll hear a woman like gently sobbing. She's not like howling her head off crying. She's not doing like this ugly loud cry kind of thing. It's this gentle weeping. And we'll hear her, it could be in the middle of the night, and it sounds like she's in the kitchen. So then you get up to go see like who's crying. Like when my mom was alive, I'd be like, is that my mom crying? Like, what's going on? Go and check. And it's like the sound would move from like the kitchen to the upstairs. Then you go upstairs, then you'd hear it back in the kitchen again. And it's like, oh, okay, I think we're going to hear some news. So are there any death omens that you have in your practice or in your cultural upbringing? Another thing for me growing up, I've always heard, well, if you dream about a wedding, it means a funeral. And if you dream about a funeral or a death, it means a wedding. Totally not true in my case whatsoever. If I dream about a death, it is a literal death. If I dream about a funeral, it's an actual funeral. So for me, I know my own death omens. If I dream about somebody dying or of a funeral, a casket, anything like that, then usually within the next day or two, I get word that, somebody's passed away. Another sign is somebody that I consider to be my soul friend. He was, I don't want to call him my soulmate. He was my first love. We were so close, and I loved him dearly, and we had a very unique and special friendship, and he was my soul friend. And he died recently. I'll do a video on that, but like one of the death signs I got for that the day when he went missing, I have my backyard. It's there's a fence going down the middle of the backyard because I live in a duplex. All along that whole entire fence, from the start to the very end of the fence, which is huge, it was completely covered in ravens. And it was like there was no space. They were like sitting side by side down the whole entire fence. I get the chills even thinking about it. And I stood in my kitchen and I looked out the window and I was like, holy shit. Because we have ravens here. We've got crows here. We've got blackbirds here. And it's normal to see them. It's not so normal to see that many ravens here in my town, all in one place. And they were all sitting on the fence. And it was like, oh, something happened. I'm going to hear some news. Something happened. This is bad. Not that the ravens are bad, but I knew that there was a message that was coming that was pretty severe. And it was like, holy shit, something's I think somebody's passing away soon, or they have passed, like something pretty significant happened here. But the whole entire fence was completely covered in ravens. There had to have been, I don't know, maybe 80, 100 ravens, and they were all like side by side sitting on the fence like little messengers, you know. So that was one of the signs had gotten when my friend had passed. Number 9, have you worked with your own shadow side? Document that journey. Some people don't work with their shadow side, and some do. Number 10, what was your first memory of a paranormal experience, or maybe a cultural ceremony or a spiritual ceremony? Do you remember maybe back to when you're a little child? My very first memory, I was about 3 years old, and it was my grandfather, and we were at their place, and he was sitting cross-legged on the floor in the living room. There was a massive storm happening outside, and he started doing this ceremony, and I can remember being a curious little kid, and my mom was there, my grandmother was there, there's my aunts were also there. And then I can remember he started praying in Cree, which is a native Canadian language, and he started to pray in Cree, and started doing his thing, and he had his little frying pan that was there, little cast iron pan, and he had his smudge going, and he started to pray, and that was my very first memory of a ceremony. So document that if you have any of those kind of experiences. Number 11, what are your own specific dream symbols? For instance, whenever I dream of a tornado, it means that there's going to be some major life change coming my way, and it's going to be so significant it will be like having the rug pulled out from under my feet. So whenever I dream about tornadoes, that's what that means. Also, if I dream about my mom, and she's usually helping me pack things, it means, you know, it's time to start preparing. It's time to start getting ready. You need to, you know, kind of do an inventory of things, or it could be literally time to pack up to get ready to move, or that kind of thing. But it's usually preparation, time to prepare. I don't like using dream interpretation books. This is just my own opinion, because somebody else could dream about a tornado and it could mean something totally different to them. So I go with my own, what I've experienced and kind of what it means to me. And I've done that with by documenting strange dream symbolism and like paying attention to life events afterwards. And it was like, okay, so when I dream about all these tornadoes, it's actually representing significant life changes. So that's what that's all about, right? And so it could be very different for each and every one of us. Number 12, do the 100-day pagan challenge. Document your results. So like, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, I can't remember how long ago, probably around 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. Can't remember, it's been so long. Probably closer to 12 years ago, I'm thinking. Maybe even 13 years ago. I don't know. Somewhere back on my channel, I had done the 100-day pagan challenge. I had created that challenge, and way back in the day, during that time, it gained a little bit of popularity, and then there was other people, they were forwarding the video, and other people were doing the 100-day pagan challenge. And all it is you do the challenge for like 90 days. You pick out, I think I picked out 100 different goals or something, things I want to do within that 90 days. So it could be, I don't know, learn about a new oracle deck. It could be leave an offering every, um, I don't know, every Wednesday at this certain location. It could be uh, hunting down a magical tool that I feel that I need, or it could be making my own magical tools. It could be whatever it is. There's all different kinds of things that you could put on your own pagan challenge because it's individual. And then for the next 90 days, I mean, you cross off each of those items on your challenge. And I thought it was really fun at the time, and I thought it would be a great way to cause like some inspiration if you're feeling like you're in a bit of a spiritual funk. And so I had done that. I think I'll either link, yeah, I'll link the video somewhere here or down below, and go check it out if you like. 13. What are your unique gifts, and how have you implemented this into your current practice? Some people have incredible gifts, and I believe that everybody has gifts of some sort, and that those gifts are something that they can use to help this world in some way. So maybe you are very artistic, and so your gift is art and bringing art and creativity into this world, and how perhaps your art can be very healing towards folks. And maybe when people look at your art or experience your art, that it gets them to think, or it inspires them, or maybe it does bring them healing or hope or whatever. Maybe your gift is you have a very take charge kind of commanding presence about you. So maybe you're able to go into emergency situations and really take charge of something to help people. Maybe doing flood relief, or organizing a group of volunteers to go and tackle some kind of issue in your community. So that could be a gift of yours. Maybe you have a gift of healing, and that could be that physical healing. So maybe you just have this natural gift of being able to bring comfort to folks that are experiencing pain or illness or trauma even. Maybe you're kind of like a natural counselor, so maybe people, they just feel comfortable when they're with you and they can open up and talk about things. Maybe you have a very strong affinity and a very close relationship to animals, and maybe animals know instinctively that they can trust you, and maybe you're able to utilize that gift in such a way, maybe working with rescue animals or whatever. There's a million different ways that we could utilize our gifts to bring positivity into our world, to bring healing into our world. So what are your gifts? And if you don't know what they are, do some self-reflection to discover what they are. Maybe ask somebody who's somewhat objective or that knows you very well, hey, like, do I have any gifts? Or like, do I have any kind of like unique abilities that I could use to help folks? And they might go, well, actually, you make these incredible tea blends, and when I had insomnia, and I couldn't sleep, I went to you and you gave me that tea blend, and oh man, that it works so good. I think that you work really well with herbs and plants, so maybe that's your gift. Or maybe somebody else, their gift is being able to commune with trees, and so they have a very close relationship with trees, and they're able to commune with them in such a way that they know that, I think my life's work, I want to do forest conservation, or, something. Figure it out. It doesn't even have to be something major like that. It could be, maybe you have a great way with kids, little kids, and maybe there's a way that you can use that gift, maybe working in a daycare or working with kids that have experienced significant trauma. So there's all different ways we can use our gifts. Maybe you have a very protective nature in you, and you really want to help people and keep your community safe. So maybe you become a police officer and you are really dedicated to keeping your community safe, helping people, that kind of thing. There's all different kinds of gifts. Do you regularly commune with nature? How, when, where? Do you do this daily? Do you do this weekly? Or not? How do you do this? Maybe you live in the city, so you sit out on your balcony and you meditate. Maybe every day you go out to a park and you sit underneath a tree, or you go for a walk in the hike, maybe in the hills or something. How do you do that? Number 15, create an outdoor altar. Is there some place you can go and create your own altar? Keep in mind that if you do create it and it's not on your property, it, might get destroyed by people that pass by. So, is there a way you could kind of create an altar space outdoors somewhere, even if it's in a park that doesn't, you're not breaking any laws or anything. So maybe it's putting certain rocks in a circle, or maybe using pine cones to kind of, create this sacred space. Or maybe there's a certain tree you go and you leave little trinkets at the base of that tree. Or maybe that's where you go and you do your meditation or spell work, that kind of thing. So maybe you have a backyard and you're able to go and create a permanent altar structure in your backyard. Do you have an outdoor altar? 16, benefits of practicing alone or with a group, and what you liked and what you disliked. Number 17, have you made any pilgrimages to any sacred sites that are in your area? And if so, was it like a once in a lifetime thing? Do you go there regularly? For instance, with myself, I go to this place by Watrous, Saskatchewan, and it's like Manitou Lake, and it's like, they call it the Dead Sea of Canada, and I go there yearly. That's kind of my own little pilgrimage. So that's where I like to go. Number 18, has your gender or sexuality impacted your spiritual practice or your cultural practice in any way? For instance, in some of our cultural ceremonies, women are supposed to wear long skirts down to their ankles. But what if you identify as being male, but you're born in a female body, and you go to the ceremony because it's something you really believe in, and there's a bit of a conflict because maybe some of the elders are like, well, no, you need to wear a long skirt. How do you reconcile that? Or can you? Are some elders more accommodating and they recognize, okay, you can go sit with the men and you don't need to wear the long skirt? Or are you forced to conform and wear the long skirt even though you don't identify as being female? Have those kinds of things happened in your practice? Have you witnessed that happening? How does that sit with you? Are you an ally? And if so, have you spoken up and defended somebody in that position? And is it okay that we can evolve our beliefs and change, or do we hang on to those beliefs so tightly it becomes stagnant and therefore becomes exclusionary towards other folks who are identifying as being different? And then, that being said, what are some cultural teachings regarding that? Because historically, even in like a lot of Native American cultures, we had what we call two-spirited people, and some tribes believed in like more than just two genders. Some believed in 5 genders. So it was like, we should remember those teachings from before. I'm already at like 30 minutes here, so I am going to stop this video and do a part 2. Okay, thanks.